Good evening and welcome to Writers Unplugged. This is a series for a chance to hear your favorite writers or maybe new to you writers in conversation as if you were eavesdropping on us in a coffee shop. My name is Jen Jumba. I'm a librarian at the main branch of Cleveland Public Library. One of my favorite things besides reading is talking to writers. It's an opportunity to get to know their craft, what inspires their stories, where they like to write, essentially getting to know them better and seeing them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. And this evening, we are so lucky to have Kimberly Giarratano joining us to talk about the first in a new series, Death of a Dancing Queen. Great title. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. To find out who else is visiting Writers Unplugged, both virtually and in person, visit cpl.org/upcoming. And then Max Backs Books on Coventry is our wonderful indie bookstore, and they have copies of Kimberly's books just waiting for you. And if you have questions, put them in the chat. I will be sure to ask her. So a brief introduction to Kimberly. She is an author of mysteries for both teens and adults. Her debut novel, Grunge Gods and Graveyards, won the 2015 Silver Fashion Award for the Best YA Killer Nashville. A former librarian, okay, so you can see why I like her already. She's currently an instructor at SUNY Orange County Community College and the chapter liaison for Sisters in Crime. She was born in New York, raised in New Jersey. Kim and her husband moved to the Poconos to raise their 3 children amid black bears and wild turkeys. And while she doesn't miss the Jersey traffic, she does miss a good bagel and lox. Agreed. I recently met Kim at Nashville. We were there for BoucherCon. We were seated next to each other for the Anthony Awards, and she is like the Venn diagram of careers. She's a librarian, she's an instructor, and a writer. And when Kim was describing this book, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes, she said, if you like Veronica Mars, then you will like Billie. And that's the thing about librarians. We know exactly how to speak to what you like to read, and that they will hook you from the minute you start. And just as Kimberly did with this fantastic character and the first book in a series with Death of a Dancing Queen. So please join me in a warm welcome.
Hi.
Hi. It's so wonderful to see you.
It's wonderful to be here. And I love libraries doing podcasts. Like, if I was still in librarianship, and the only reason why I'm not is because there's just no jobs where I live. Not because, like, there's just nothing. I would do this. I think it's amazing. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. It's a ton of fun when you get to talk books with people, and then to be really granular when we were talking at BoucherCon, to figure out if we're character driven, if we're plot driven. And you kind of seem to have wrapped it all up in this book, Death of a Dancing Queen. Love the character. Billie is like fantabulous. So can we talk a little bit about your writing journey?
Oh, yeah.
How you started writing?
Yes. So I was like a writer my whole life, but I didn't think I could be a fiction. I didn't think I could be an author, a novelist. I thought I'd have to go to school for a fancy degree in writing, and I didn't do that.
So you got a fancy degree in books.
I don't know. I was like, I'm sure I have to major in like creative writing. Like, to me, that was just, you went to college and majored in something and that became your job. Right. So long story short, I waited a very long time to start writing, and I waited till I was like, I had a baby and I was pregnant again. I'm like, now's the time to write a novel, Kim. Good job. So
timing is everything.
I think I don't know. I think I was pregnant with my second kid, and I wrote a really bad rough draft of what became Grunge Gods and Graveyards. And then I think when Benny was born, I was like, all right, now I'll revise this book. And it took me 6 months, but I learned a lot. And that got picked up by a small press called Red Down Publishing. They still publish today. They just don't publish YA.
Okay.
And I was indie for a while after that. I wrote more young adult novels, mysteries. I wrote a novel called Dead and Breakfast, which is set in a haunted bed and breakfast in Key West.
Ooh.
So fun. I wrote a follow-up to that. I wrote like a novella. I worked on short stories. And then I started my Billie book. And I was like, in this, no, it's so pretty, right? Look at how
it is. It's like sparkly. Oh, it's awesome. Yes.
And then the second book also shimmers. They shimmer. It's great.
Yes.
But I started writing Billie. I loved Veronica Mars so much, and I could not find Veronica Mars like books. Because a lot of PI books with women in particular, they're older, which I'm older, but I wanted a youthful character because I had a very specific goal in mind. But I really just wanted the snark of Veronica Mars, the cleverness of Veronica Mars, like just how fresh it felt to me when I watched the show. And I was
Yes.
like, well, I'll just entertain myself and I'll write my own version. And that's what I wound up doing. I wrote a Veronica Mars. I call it my Jewish East Coast Veronica Mars. And set it in Jersey, where I'm from. And, you know, surrounded her with fun characters like her grandfather that I love so much and her brother. And she has like, you know, an ex-boyfriend not on the right side of the law. And his father is into, you know, illegal shenanigans. And I wanted to bring back Jewish gangsters, which isn't really a thing anymore. Not the way we think of them. But that's not to say there aren't criminal Jews, but not gangsters, like, you know, there's no Meyer Lanskys anymore, no Bugsy Siegels. And so, and I wound up getting an agent for it, and it took 2 years to sell, because publishers were saying, oh, female-led private eye fiction does not sell well.
Sarah Paretsky.
Yep, I was like, Sarah Paretsky, a sister in crime. And Janet Ivanovich and Sue Grafton, like they made huge careers off of their sleuths. But they were saying, yeah, we can't count that. We don't count those. And so I got turned down by a really good publisher. I mean, I have a really good publisher, but this was another really good publisher. And they turned me down on that reason. They said, they're just not a big sell for us. We love your book, not a sell for us. So it just took some time to sell. And then Datora picked it up, and they've been very good to me. So
Well, I think it's the journey that you were meant to take.
yes.
And so there's something very rewarding about seeing it come to fruition. Makes it that much more meaningful. I kind of think about this whenever I have hiccups or stumbles along the way, right?
Publishing is a journey, you know.
Yes.
It's a journey. It is not, and like any journeys, there, you know, your hostel is closed, the train left without you, you got your luggage stolen, like crazy things.
Life is a choose your own adventure. So why shouldn't publishing be too? But I'm so glad that your publisher picked you up. I'm so glad that you were tenacious to continue to follow this. And just the fact that you've been writing all kinds of things like short stories, novellas, you know, YA, and how grateful I am. I have nieces and they are big readers, that there is YA, because I grew up in the generation where you went right from like Judy Blume to the adult section. There was like none of this cool catching people kind of where they are. So for you to be able to write and to fill that space, and for teens, for that stuff to resonate, I mean, who wouldn't want to go to a haunted place in Key West?
So I was a young adult librarian.
Okay.
I went and got my master's degree in New Jersey. You do need a master's to be a librarian. Not every in Jersey you do. So when I went for my first job interview, my first and only job interview for a public library, they did not have a young adult librarian. They were going to hire me as a children's librarian. And I was a teacher. So I worked with, you know, young kids, and I worked with old too. But when they told me they didn't have a YA librarian, I was like, well, you need a YA librarian. Like, that's what you have to have. How do you not have this? So I wound up selling myself as a YA librarian, and I got hired. So during my tenure there, I just read YA constantly. Yeah. So when I decided to embark on my first novel, YA was immediately what I was going to do. And I did. I have 5 actually young adult novels that I've written.
Wow.
Grudge Gods Graveyards, the novella follow-up, my Key West mysteries. And then I wrote a book called School Lies, which I have here.
Ooh.
Show off that cover too. Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Rachel Lawston did this. She is a UK cover designer. She does a lot of traditional publishing covers in England, and she did one for me.
Nailed it.
Yes, but this is a young adult novel set in a made-up boarding school in Pennsylvania in 1995. So so it was just a natural, you know, gateway was going to be young adult fiction.
Right.
And when I started with the Billie books, it was just I had a different idea, and so I leveled up. I also thought I was going to independently publish them. And the problem with young adult literature and being an indie author is teens don't read on their phones, believe it or not. They want books. They go. Yes. They don't have credit cards. They're not going to Amazon to download something to their Kindle because they don't have a credit card to get to. They go to the library, either school or the public library. they swap books with their friends. And it's the one time they just don't want to be on the phone. So I had a really hard time sort of selling my books to teen readers. So I was like, well, I'll work on a new series with an older protagonist and I can market it differently. I mean, sometimes publishing isn't so much creativity as much as business decisions.
And somewhere, there's an intersection that lies there. I mean, you just brought back a memory when you were talking about teens swapping books. And I can't tell you like how many times I did that. Like my parents were like Sweet Valley High, right? Not really the greatest. We would swap those. We would swap, of course, Judy Blume, Nancy Drew. Not that the library didn't have books, they had them, but there's just something cool about being able to swap books with your friends. And then like the informal book discussions before they became like a thing that they are now. So I just think about all those books that you wrote that kids are swapping in the halls, which is really great and fantastic.
I hope so. I did do career day a couple of years ago at the local high school.
Yeah.
And the kid came up to me, this teenage boy, and he goes, I've read all your books. And I was like, you've read all my books? Wow.
Wait, like, and this was not your son, right?
He was not my kid. I was not related to this person at all. And he's like, my brother has them. I'm like, how does your brother have all my books? Like, I sell mostly online. Like, very few kids have like and he's like, I don't know, he just had them, so I read them. I was so touched. I gave him a copy of I was like, I brought one copy of Death of a Dancing Queen. It's yours. Now you have the complete collection, because it was just so touching.
Absolutely.
So touching. But I totally, going back to your point about young adult literature when we were teenagers, like I'm like 2 years younger than John Green, right? So okay. John and I are the same age. So I didn't get to read John Green as a teenager. No. I think I went from Christopher Pike, and then I was reading Michael Crichton. Like I remember reading The Hot Zone. My mom had it on her nightstand, and I was like, oh, I guess that's what I'm reading. And I was reading a lot of young books too, even as a teenager, because my mom used to go to the library and just take a stack of books out and bring them home to me. And I would just read. I was not fussy. I would just read whatever she brought. And some things I loved.
Right.
Like some things I just love so much. My kids are fussy. So I'm like, do you want this book? Do you want this book? But yeah, there was no YA. And when I even became a YA librarian, I was like, oh my God, you kids are so lucky.
Exactly. Like, do you know?
And the Hunger Games and all the vampire books that came out and all the spec fic books that came out.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have like the whole like middle grade. So they transition a little bit better to the YA from like the quote unquote chapter books, right? I mean, it's just so fun to see what they have an opportunity to read and what will resonate with them.
Yeah, because they also get things for them.
Yes.
Like there was nothing for us. It was like, I guess Christopher Pike. And I think at one point I was also reading a biography on George Burns. I picked up. I was a page at the library. My job. So I would check out VHS and I'd watch a lot of old movies and just whatever I was shelving that looked interesting to me, I just put it aside and take it home. So.
Yeah. Cleveland Public Library is also a research library. So we have, mobile shelving and stacks of books, like historical stuff. And I can remember going in the stacks to look for one thing. And I was gone for way longer because I couldn't stop looking at all the other things on the shelf and pulling them out and flipping them open and then putting them back where they're supposed to be, But there's just something very cool about not knowing what it was that you were going to end up reading, versus like, on Amazon, I have to order this and I have to order that. Of course, everybody's going to order Death of a Dancing Queen.
I hope
we're done talking.
Actually, it's interesting. Library sales are my best sales.
Heck yeah. We want to support a librarian. Once a librarian, always a librarian. So
and I love it. Like, I'm so grateful to libraries. It's not even funny because that's, I know. And I'm one of those authors who will go on WorldCat to see where my book is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm in this many libraries in WorldCat.
Well, it's terrific. And you understand how special it is to have your book on the shelf, but not only that, but when you're able to recommend just that right book for that right reader who's standing in front of you, and then they become like fiercely loyal and they will read everything that you write from that point forward. They'll read your entire backlist. They'll read everything you blurb. It's a special connection that you have with readers. Yeah,
I hope so. I mean, readers are the best part of of writing. I mean, I don't write in a vacuum. I write to entertain myself with the goal of entertaining other people.
Well, I have to say, I mean, we'll talk about Death of a Dancing Queen. I'm joined in conversation with award-winning Kimberly Giarratano. Just where the idea for Billie came, you said from Veronica Mars, right? How much of you is in Billie?
A lot. I mean,
The
I'm not that
sarcastic delivery has to be in there for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm funny. I mean,
You're very funny. I sat next to you the whole entire time during the Anthony Awards, and I kept laughing. I was like,
I'd like
really
to think
funny.
I'm funny. The joke is in my family and my friends is Kim thinks she's funny. Like
No.
Like I have a college friend named Kim, and I was like, well, you can just call me Funny Kim. Like I gave myself a nickname. So a lot of Billie comes from like her Jewish experience comes from mine. I grew up in a secular Jewish household, you know, with grandparents and parents who come from New York. So there is a lot of New York influence. I always say like Seinfeld Judaism is like very comforting to me.
Yeah.
You know, but of course I am not 24 years old. I'm far older. I am not as interesting. Like what Billie allows me to do is sort of live out certain fantasies of just being an ass kicking badass, like job, getting out of scrapes, telling people the things that I wish I could tell people for those things. But
like an alter ego kind of.
Yeah.
I'm going to channel my inner Billie right now.
Never that cool at 24. But her experiences with her mom regarding Alzheimer's disease and dementia, I can relate to that very much.
I'm sorry.
Dementia. And her grandfather is wish fulfillment. I would say Gramps is wish fulfillment. You know, maybe there's a couple of things he'll say there that are something like my grandpa might say, but my grandpa was not like her grandfather. He's such an involved kind of parental figure. He's incredibly smart about investigative work. My grandpa he worked for the post office and the garment union and like
my grandfather worked for the post office too. So
he wouldn't I think be able to tell me like how to like conduct a stakeout and stuff like that.
No.
But there are definitely aspects of Billie and her sense of humor is definitely mine and things that she might enjoy. Like I'll stick in some stuff there. Like she likes Taylor Swift. I like Taylor Swift.
Who doesn't like Taylor
90s
Swift?
Fashion because that's when I grew up.
Exactly. Well, I liked the grunge, the reflection on the t-shirts that she was wearing. And I was like, oh my God, I think I had one of those.
Yeah. So that's me just having fun with it and things. But
absolutely. So it's interesting, I guess maybe wish fulfillment is that, when Billie graduates from college, she does not pursue a typical, and I'm using the term loosely, career. She decides, to work as a private investigator, and her grandfather, Gramps, has the license to the agency. So she has, all the classes you take in college and then how quickly she has to learn kind of the ins and outs of this world. Like there's little rules that you plant, like, do what you're going to do. Don't get caught. Well, okay, obviously, but it's fun to read, absolutely fun to read.
And so one of the things, first of all, thank you. But when I was writing YA, one of the things about YA, like teenage characters, is they can be quite subversive, right? Because they're not adults. A lot of consequences. Like if a teen's caught breaking and entering in a YA novel, I can fudge it so they don't really get in real trouble. But for the most part, they do things that are quite subversive. They also be under adults' notice. Once you get into that adult sphere, you can be subversive, but there are real life consequences that could end you up in legal jeopardy. So for that, I have to be sneakier even, or she has to follow the law in some parts. That I didn't, I've made my teen protagonist just slide right under. And then you add in some ghosts and like all the rules go out the window. But I did have to follow some rules. So I did learn in New Jersey, you can't be a private investigator. You can't get licensed until you're 25 years old and you have a certain amount of hours that are supervised. So I couldn't make her licensed. Like I did stick to some realistic limitations because I did want to ground it in reality.
Absolutely. I mean, even the language used in the book, right? So like Nancy Pearl, talks about the 4 ways by people tend to read a book. You know, people read for character, they read for plot, language, or setting. This is kind of a mixture, a mashup of all of those, because you have this wonderful character, you have this setting, which, if you also listen to the audio, is spot on in terms of accents.
Is that too strong? I feel like it's a little strong.
Oh, it is. It is quite fun to listen
Okay,
to.
okay.
It's absolutely, it's entertaining. You have this story, and then once you start to realize it's not just one story, there's like multiple layers of stories, which you've done incredibly well. And then language. I mean, things like I played the sick parent card like a reverse Uno. I mean, it just like, I find myself laughing out loud in the book, not just with, you know, what she's getting herself into, but how things are absolutely described.
Thank you.
So,
I'm
yeah.
glad. So it's funny. I just turned in my edits for book 3, and I throw some jokes in, but my editors are really young women. Like, they happen to be quite young. They are very, very smart women, but they're young. They're definitely Gen Z. And so the things that make them laugh are surprising to me, especially because I do put jokes in there that they don't respond to. And I was like, you guys didn't like my Weimar Republic joke. I was like,
Yeah.
I thought that was killer. But they're
Yeah.
like, but this other line, like they're in there. So it's always funny to see what lands, but I'm never sure. I will write what I think is a joke, and then
Yeah.
I will play it for friends and be like, is this funny? Like, I'm almost like, it's like I'm doing stand up.
Exactly. Am
Like,
I fun? Am I funny, Kim?
yeah, can I workshop my joke for you? It's in like this chapter.
Well,
Or
it just makes me think like,
I'm reading a
can you,
book.
you could also do stand up, I would think.
I've had fantasies, but I was like, you need a niche, and like a niche of like, what is your thing? There's so many comics that are like, oh, I'm Gen X, and it's like those kids today. I was like, I don't know what would be my thing, but I do write some jokes that I don't I shouldn't say I workshop them. I really don't. I just ask if they land, and then if they don't, I'm like, well, it was funny.
Yeah. Well, I laughed
I'm
a
so
lot throughout the book. So I'm joined in conversation by award-winning writer Kimberly Giarratano, and this is her first in the Billie series. So I just heard you say the magic words, turned in edits for book 3, because I have book 2 waiting to be read. So knowing that that's going to continue makes me so happy.
Oh yeah.
So
And book 3, the cover's out. It's I don't know where it is.
does it shimmer?
What it should shimmer, but
Okay.
shimmer's expensive. And so I'm one of those authors. I like to know how the sausage is made, so I'm always peppering like my publisher, because they're a small press, so they're like very cool with me asking like a bazillion questions. And I'm like, I got the breakdown of shimmer costs extra money, and you need to earn that extra money. So
Yes.
I'm hoping for shimmer for book 3. Like
Oh,
this, you can see book 2 shimmers.
yes. Purple.
It's
Yes.
and book 3 has a green cover. It's so dope. It's on my socials and stuff if you want to see the cover. It's called Make a Killing, book 3.
Ooh, cannot wait.
It's so fun. Every book, like Devil in Profile, was a blast to write. Like I wrote a Hanukkah scene that I loved. I was like, this is genius.
Yeah.
There's scenes where I'm like, damn, like I was enjoying myself so tremendously. So it should come across on the
you at being a librarian, you know that you read a lot. I read a lot. And so we can always tell when somebody is, I don't know, phoning it in versus whether a writer is truly genuinely connected to what they're writing about. That humor that we see right now and hear right now, that certainly comes across on the page.
I'm so
I mean,
excited.
without a doubt, to the point where I'm like, oh, now there needs to be like a Billie series. Forget Veronica Mars, although Kristen was so young. Kristen Bell, oh my goodness. I went back and watched a few episodes. I was like, oh my God, she was a baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's that, but it comes across. And we're just so grateful as readers when we stumble across a series that we like. It's fantastic. So how do you decide that you're going to write a series versus a standalone?
That's a good question. So I have written I did write a standalone. I think most of my books I envisioned as series, except for Grunge Gods and Graveyards. I was like, that's a standalone. And then I had a novella, which is like a spin-off on another character.
Okay.
A lot of my books I sort of envision as a series, because I can picture where I'll take these characters over the course. And I do get ideas of like, especially for Billie, I'm like, oh, I put her in this situation. I can put her in that situation.
Mhm.
And when you have a cast of characters
Yes.
that are improving their lives book by book, learning about themselves, stumbling upon these cases, getting better at their jobs,
Yeah.
you can really just start to imagine where you can take them. And there's like Billy's story just didn't feel finished to me at the end of Death of a Dancing Queen. Obviously, the mystery is finished, but like where I could take her, what she could,
Absolutely.
who she could confront, where her relationships can go.
Yes.
Like the sky is the limit. And I would love to see Billy like turned into a TV series.
Yes.
But I know how hard that is because Jersey is such a setting here. It's like its own character.
I was going to say that it comes across as its own character.
Right. And that is intentional. Like Jersey is a vibe.
Yes.
Like The Sopranos wouldn't be The Sopranos set in
Cleveland.
LA. It would be a story. It is
Right.
Jersey personified.
Absolutely.
And I would argue that's the same with Billie Levine. Like, Jersey is as much a character. So sometimes I'm like, ooh, maybe I can put her in Atlantic City. But I haven't been to AC in a very, very long time. So
Oh my God, how fun would that research be though?
I'd have to, I guess I'd be like, I'm in like, you're in the smoky casinos and
with the lady like hole in the slot.
Yeah, not anymore, man. I wish I could put her in Atlantic City in like the 80s. That would be that is giving me ideas though.
Good.
So it's interesting because Harlan Coben, who was at BoucherCon, writes his book set in Jersey, and then his TV shows are all set in the UK.
Yeah.
I always find that so interesting. I mean, his TV shows are fantastic, but I always find that so interesting that they just are like, the Jersey setting. We'll just put it in the UK. I was like, all right.
Yeah, and everybody with the proper British accents versus the Jersey. Yeah. Okay. But they both work really, really well. So can we talk a little bit? So I'm joining conversation with award-winning writer Kimberly Giarratano, Death of a Dancing Queen. Can we talk a little bit about Billy's brother?
Oh, yeah, David.
Yes. What a wonderful. Oh, I mean, he's just a fabulous character.
He's a good, like, steadying influence, I feel like, on her.
Mm-hmm.
He's the voice, maybe, of the reader who's like, Billy, for the love of God. Like,
there were a couple moments where I was like, girl, what are you thinking? Like, don't do that. And I was like, oh, like, here I am, like, talking to a book, But
and David would say the same thing. He'd be like, what are you doing? Calm down. So
let's take a breath.
Yeah, he's a good like stabling influence on her, but also one of the things that I like that David brings to the series is, first of all, his own relationship gives me some conflict to work with, and also he's an LPN, he's a licensed practical nurse, so I get to use his medical experience, like expertise as well. And in my life, I'm surrounded by nurses. My parents were nurses. My brother's a nurse. My sister-in-law's a nurse. Everybody's a nurse. Not Kit, but everybody else is a nurse.
Wow.
Yeah. So I get to I'll just be like, can this I'm using the way of holding a phone. I really should.
Exactly. Right.
Can I kill a person in this way? Would this work? Or, if this person has this condition, what would I have to give them, or what meds, or and all that stuff. So. But I do like David. I love exploring his relationship with Maddie, and I do like that. Also, he is sometimes he's the voice of reason, I find. He seems to be able to balance his responsibility to his family with his own desires. He sets boundaries that Billy really doesn't do in the beginning. She is just like, no, I got to do everything. And it's
I like the dynamic between the three of them, between Gramps and David and Billy, as they're trying to work together and yet differently to help, Billy's mom. So,
and I love Gramps. Like, I was like, you're a great grandpa.
Yeah.
I wrote him.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that makes life complicated, right, is what we tell people versus what we tell ourselves, right? And that comes across as a theme throughout the book, and not just because it's a mystery, but just in general, trying to figure out what it is that, we want or who we are. So I thought that was well done. and adds to that extra layer as Billie. I mean, she's young. She's 24. You're still trying to figure out who you are, what you want. She has, this is why it needs to go to the screen. This incredibly good looking, suave, sophisticated, wealthy ex-boyfriend, that was supposed to be away, but comes back. So further complicates things.
Yeah, he was. Oh, speaking of fun to write, I love.
Yes.
I was like, he's so sexy. And I was like, I didn't realize I could write sexy so well, but he is so sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the reader could be like, oh, I could see why Billie has a hard time like disengaging from him, even though he's not really he's not on the right side of the law.
He's not, but he's not as far on the wrong side of the law as others.
He skirts it in a very gray area.
He's almost like the YA skirter, right? Like there aren't really, yes, he's an adult and there could be consequences, but at the same time, he's savvy enough to know how to skirt things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I liked building a backstory for him where I could just be like, he went to someone's bar mitzvah and figured out how to fence the seafood. Like I like that these ridiculous things.
It is those kinds of details that make the characters totally relatable. I think there's like everybody who reads this and is watching and listening is like, oh my God, I know exactly who would do something like that or has done something very similar to that.
Oh, I need to meet that person.
Oh my God. We all have this streak where some of us kind of stay within the confines of what's supposed to be good. Mm-hmm. And then there are others, where I feel like that's where Billie is. Right. And then I think there are other people that kind of skirt around it, but without like bad consequences, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things I love to do is to take tropes that we're familiar with and turn them on their heads, which I think is a very Rob Thomas thing to do too. Like that was one of the things that made Veronica Mars so fun was they would take these stereotypes and he would just twist them. And so I like to think I do the same. So I wanted to take what we would think of as like the Sopranos, the Bada Bing, strip joint, but it's not run by an Italian family. It's run by a Jewish family. And the manager of the strip joint is a gay man.
Yes.
Who is dating Billie's brother, who used to date Billie's brother.
Yes.
And, I like those are, this Jewish boyfriend. And I think Jews sometimes get a bad rap in Hollywood. They are often, there are stereotypes poorly associated with Jewish men. I think that they're not attractive, they're whiny, like whatever terrible stereotypes you can imagine.
Yeah, you turned this one on its head then.
I want to turn on its head. No, he's hot as hell. Exactly. Yeah. Like he's hot and he's worldly, but he's worldly because he's kind of doing illegal things, or he's getting, he's just skirts the law. And, Billie's working class. So, another Jewish stereotype is we're very wealthy. We all went to camp. Like I grew up in a very middle-class household. My parents were nurses. I never went to sleepaway camp. I never went to an expensive day camp. I did get bat mitzvahed, but my bat mitzvah party was in my own home, which was unheard of. Nobody did that.
Yeah, no, these are lavish events.
They are lavish events. If you've just seen the new Kristen Bell show, Nobody Wants This.
Yeah, I'm halfway through.
Okay, well, I won't spoil anything, but you can see the portrayal of Jewish people there.
Yes.
That is LA Jews. That is very different from anything I grew up in. But there is a bat mitzvah scene, I should say. Yeah. And it's a very lavish event. They are lavish. I had mine in my house. My brother had his in the house. Like we did not have one out. Nobody I knew did that. Not one person I knew did that. But that's just how we grew up. Yeah. That's where money was better spent. To have a little party in the house with family and friends, not to spend exorbitant amounts of money in 1992.
Yeah.
At a place people had their weddings. Like we didn't do that.
Right.
So I mean, I actually, my husband was like, oh, there's this bad review of the book on Amazon. I'm like, why would you read this to me? Somebody was complaining about that they didn't think a Jewish detective was realistic. Because they grew up in Teaneck. And I was like, my concern was like, they were like, she didn't describe Teaneck correctly at all. And that was my fear, but more like, I don't know any Jewish detectives in Teaneck. I'm like, this isn't nonfiction.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm not writing a memoir.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Super fake. But that goes to say the towns, everything mentioned in the book in terms of towns is correct. If a town is mentioned, it is in Jersey. I don't make up towns. I might make up places in the town. Kentwell is not a real school.
Paretsky's storage, was that a nod to?
Yeah.
There you go.
Like, those are not real places because I don't want to, get in trouble for what is it? Libel if it's in print, like libeling a place that's real. But towns, they are all there. Like in the third book, I set a large portion of it in Hoboken, which I live in Hoboken. So I
in there. Yeah.
Hoboken's great. So I spent, and then I've put her. I'm gonna write a short story with her soon. I don't know. Maybe I'll put her where, in Monmouth County where I grew up. We'll see. But they're all real places. So if you want to know Jersey, read a Billie book.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got family that's in New Jersey. So, and then I have my former boss is now the director of the library for Monmouth County. So we're colliding all over the place.
I was a page at the Monmouth County Library headquarters.
Very cool.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about the two different timelines that you capture in your book, in Death of a Dancing Queen?
Yes. So everything, when you mean two different times, because the crimes are in two different times.
The crimes are in two different times.
Yes, we can. So, so one of my friends, very smart girl, she's like, a lot of books where you think the first crime isn't the first crime, it's really the second crime. I love that with mystery, like where you think the first crime is the first crime, it's not. It's actually, it's like the response to it's a second crime, and the first crime happened long ago. And I love that. It's like kind of like World War II is an extension of World War I in many ways. But
Absolutely.
So yes, like the opening scene of Death of a Dancing Queen is a murder. And we can see, and the murder happens in the early 90s. And it, we can, I don't want to give too much away, but I never.
But just how did you approach that? Did you, write that part, and then as there are things that go back to that time separately, or did you write it like start to finish, like chapter 1 through the end of the book?
I mean,
or do you write scenes and then figure out kind of where they all go? How does your writing process work?
I forgot how it kind of worked for this one because it was so long ago.
Sorry. Just make something up. Nobody knows.
So I plot everything.
Okay.
And I'm an intricate plotter. I basically open up a notebook and I go, what if this happened? And then what if this? Ooh, and then what if I did this? I'm like, nah, that doesn't work. What if I do this instead? Ooh, I have a better idea. What if I did? That's what I do in a notebook. And eventually I get enough plot that I can then mark scenes. And I do move scenes. I don't know. I think even in the rough draft, so in the rough draft, the first scene on the page is we meet Billie. And then I thought, ooh, wouldn't it be cool? It's to do a prologue, but I label it chapter 1 because nobody likes prologues. That's my
mistake. I learned that at BoucherCon. Like, what's the deal with prologues versus chapters?
I don't know. Stupid hot takes in publishing, like no prologue. Like like when people were querying and stuff, agents would be like, we don't need prologue. So I'm like, just call it chapter 1.
Yeah.
That's what I do. It's a prologue.
It is a prologue. That's funny.
Prologue. But it's chapter 1. Anyway, so then I thought, ooh, this would be a great scene. And then I wrote it and I really loved it. I was like, damn, this is a good scene. And then it just, that this is going to play a part in it. So, and I've done the same in the second book where I have a prologue. It's chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
Where it gives you insight into the crime that will occur. And I've done the same thing for book 3. So I've kind of I want to say Michael Connolly did it, I think, in one of the Bosch books I read. I don't know if he did it in all of them, where you kind of get insight into the crime that will be investigated with the first scene. And I just think it's fun because you sort of get it from because the books are told from Billie's POV. Right. So it just gives us an opportunity to kind of look at the point of view of the catalyst, when you think
Right.
about it.
And then just the meticulousness that you have to kind of pull it all together. I marvel.
That comes in edits. Don't marvel too much. That's like somebody pointing out, there's no continuity here. And I'm like, ugh. Or
Yeah.
there are times where I'm driving and I'm like, I didn't plant this clue. Like, and I'll have to go back.
Is
But
Billie always with you? Like if you're driving, is she like kind of riding shotgun with you, or does she kind of leave you alone to like let you live your life, or is she constantly chirping in your ear? Like
if I'm actively drafting, I'll be like, what am I going to do about this thing? If I'm not actively drafting, like I'm not actually actively drafting right now for Billie, kind of quiet. I'm trying to plot a short story, and so that I've been like thinking about a Billie short story, because short stories are hard because it's like I'm not.
I used to write before I was a librarian. I worked in radio advertising, and I used to write a lot of commercials, and we used to always say if I had more time it would be shorter. Like the ability to be that succinct and for each word to matter is so much harder. Not that saying that writing a novel isn't hard, but there's just a different approach to having to be succinct. Every word matters, every sentence matters. It has to convey so much in such a short period of time.
Ask a writer what is worse, writing the novel or writing the synopsis for the novel, and they will tell you.
Am I going to guess that most will say synopsis?
Oh, they'll be like, ugh, I wrote 80,000 words. Now I got to write 1,000-word summary. I can't do it. I can't do it. Or a query letter for those that are querying their novels to agents, summing up, this bite size. I've gotten so much better at it now. I have a great agent, so I'm not looking for one. But now I've gotten really good.
So what can you tell me, just because I don't know, like what a query letter entails? An introduction, obviously, to you, and then clearly not a prologue, but how much of a snippet do you put in there of what your book's about?
So basically, whatever I write, like whatever you write at the back, you're not giving the ending. You're writing this like jazzy back copy. That's what goes in your query letter. This was, I thought it was pretty good. So that's kind of what you're doing. And like, speaking of, like, they're like, can you take out this many words so we can get it on the cover, on the back, looking nice?
Yeah.
And I'm a little like, I am not a type A personality, except when it comes to my work. Like, for the most part. And if an editor says to me, we need you to fix this, I'll fix it. Yeah. But if somebody is like, we're going to write the back cover for you, I'll be like, I'll do it. Let me do it.
Yeah.
I know it. I'll take care of it. Like that's the point where I'm like, I'll this is
that's what everybody picks up to look at. I mean, so it makes,
I just, if somebody does like a really, like somebody did a phenomenal job, if they wrote it and I was like, that's amazing, I wouldn't touch a thing, great. But for the most part, I'm just like, I'll take care of it. Because that's just, it's my work. I have the time. I'll do it. Like publisher people, the people who work in my publishing, they're so busy. I'm like, I will take this off your plate.
If you can make it easier, and it's awesome.
But that's what it is. It's like, dear agent. And then, my jazzy back cover. And then I am the author of this, or, and then I'm like, thanks for your consideration. You send it on its way. I do not envy people querying agents. It is tough. I don't love it.
That's the thing about it that I hate to hear as a librarian and as a reader, like how hard it is to be published and stay published. I mean, that's the part that it's like, all right, who do I need to go to talk to? Like, what are you thinking, not continuing this, publishing this? Like, it just.
So I would argue it has never been easier to be published and harder to be published, because I was able to indie publish a lot of my novels. I mean, not, there was expense. Like I had to pay for cover artists and I had to pay for editing, but I was able to take books that agents were like, nah, it's not in, my first book, Grunge Gods and Graveyards, got picked up by a small press, and the editing that they did on that book was amazing. Shout out to Reddit in terms of their editing. Like, it was phenomenal. It took forever. They were meticulous. It was just incredible. But then I did self-publish my other books, And I hired editors, I hired my editor, I hired my cover artist, I paid for the software. So in that case, it was easy for me to get my work out there. I didn't have to wait for gatekeepers, so to say.
Right.
So to speak, I mean. So in that case, it was easier, but it wasn't easy to get visibility because there's tons of people publishing. So that's one of the other problems is there's so many books that come out, so many that come out that it's so hard to stand apart. But when it comes to traditional publishing, it does feel tremendously difficult to get published and stay published. And that's another thing. I know authors who have written tremendous books, who have earned out their advances and who don't get picked up by another publisher because they didn't get the sales that they want. The next publisher is like, you don't have enough sales on those other books. I earned out. That's usually in itself. So, but then I have another author friend who writes in the romance genre, and she heard from her agent that they want to stick with the people that they always stick with. They're not looking for new talent. And I was like, genres are so different. I mean, I don't write romance, like mystery genres I can only relate to for the most part.
Right.
So, but then I hear from readers that are like, I love when you find a new author, you can read their backlist.
Yes.
I love that. I love a
backlist.
Well, you're not going to get a backlist if you keep cycling through like writers. Like, so what are we doing? And I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. Like this idea that we're just clinging on to sales, which is just not an indication of your talent, your book, story you're telling. It has to do with marketing. It has to do with timing. It has to do with how much your publisher can monetarily invest in you.
Right.
And that says nothing about storytelling.
No. Amen. Because that's the thing that I think, like, there's so many, I don't want to say artificial, for lack of a better word, things that take away from the very art of storytelling. I mean, you tell in this Death of a Dancing Queen with Billie, who's one of like the greatest characters. And obviously I met you at BoucherCon, which is a mystery writers conference, which means I tend to read a lot of mysteries. I've never read anybody like Billie, which is what I love. And had I not been sitting next to you, I would have eventually, as I go through the program and, look at the books and read more about, but like how wonderful it is to discover. And then I look at like who blurbed your books. Okay. Kelly Garrett, who I met at BoucherCon. I was like, oh my God, Kate Moretti, who one day I would like to meet. And the other person who I really, really like and have not met yet is Tessa Weggert.
Yeah, she's lovely.
With her, yeah, like she has a wonderful series too, where her setting, I think, becomes a character as well. Yes. Dark and atmospheric, and
for sure, those Thousand Islands, right?
Exactly.
Like, I gotta go there.
That's exactly right. But that's the thing, the camaraderie that I see with you all as mystery writers, supporting each other, talking to each other, helping each other, promoting each other. It's one of the greatest things to see as a reader. And I don't know that other readers always see that. I'm in a distinct advantage.
Because you're like, insider info when you're a librarian.
Insider info. So like, it's great when people come in and they're like, well, what should I read? Or I'm going on a trip. And it's like, well, you got to kind of figure out what you're in the mood for, and what would resonate. And, putting that book in their hand and them coming back and saying, okay, what else have you got? Had a customer come in today and was like, okay, you told me to read this new Elizabeth Strout. We need to talk about this. Have you? And I was like, whoa, haven't finished yet. Don't talk. La, 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 la. Right. But it's that kind of that great rapport that happens with readers, but it's only because they're writers.
Oh yeah.
Like you, that create these worlds and characters that, we just have to be a part of.
I love Reader's Advisory. My favorite thing to do though now is I'm a patron. I go into the library. I'm like, you got to read this book. What did I read? I The Briar Club. Oh my God.
Yes.
Fantastic. I was like, you got to read this book. And then, I just discovered, just by browsing the shelf, John Banville, who's an author.
Oh, that is heavy on the heart.
So I never read any of his work before.
Oh, there's one I'm still haunted by, taking place on a bench between a couple.
I was like, Ireland, crime fiction in Ireland, sign me up. And then
Yeah.
I started, I was like, wow, this sentence structure is so incredible. And he was blurbed by who's the author who wrote Yellowface?
Oh, Kate Kwong, like
Yes,
RF. Yeah. Mm,
he blurbed him. So I was like,
yes.
well, she's really good. I gotta
Yeah.
read his book. So I picked it up. You know what's interesting about blurbs is I never realized the like they are influencers in a way. Because
Absolutely.
that's how I discovered Cassandra Clare many years ago. Because
Yeah.
Holly Black, who's my favorite author of all time,
Oh, yes.
huge Holly Black fan. She blurbed Cassandra Clare's book, and I was like, "Well, I have to read it because Holly Black says it's good." And I love the Mortal Instruments. I mean, I wound up not reading. It was, Cassandra Clare's world is like ginormous. So,
Yeah.
but blurbs really do make a difference. And I was Kelly, a Jersey girl, friend of,
Mhm.
know her from Sisters in Crime.
Yep.
Like and then I joke that I joke that Delia Pitts writes a detective series set in New Jersey as well. And my
Mhm.
running joke is that Delia and I should go on the road called Garden State Gumshoes because
Oh, heck yeah.
trying to make that happen. But it's not easy I'm going to start the library surrogate. I'm just going to start a plan because I know enough Jersey authors. I'm like, we should be
Oh,
able to
absolutely. And
try that.
I know a couple people in Jersey, so I can, help
We should be able to
where I can.
libraries because you know what? Barnes and Noble, they're not where it's at. Like you want to do a good, great program, an author program, you go to the libraries. That's my opinion.
You go to the library, you go to the indie bookstores.
Yeah, I need to
Absolutely.
go to.
Yeah. No, yeah, when we're done, we'll
Yeah,
talk.
hook names.
So I mean, gosh, my goodness, time flies. Talking to you. I could talk to you for like the rest of the evening. So here's the thing I'm thinking, when people go to a performance, like a musical or a Broadway show, right? And they walk away, that's how you know it's a good show when they're walking out, kind of singing the words, right? So I kind of think like after talking to you, hopefully people have like Dancing Queen kind of running through their head and they're like all excited to go and get the first installment of Billy because now we know there will be a third. There's a second one right now. Will be a third. So I know Shimmer. Oh my gosh, we should just like set up like a GoFundMe. Shimmer
was hard to cut. This Shimmer was hard fought because they're like, it's expensive, and I was like, but the first one shimmers.
I know, right?
And this one's a ride. This one, so Devlin just. I talk about Nazi looted art, and I did do research. Like all the art mentioned in here is real. The only art made up is, from amateur. But any paintings that are mentioned in here, any artists are actual, really exist. I looked them up. I did.
And see, that's the thing I'll do when I read it, and I'm sure other readers do too, is that they see it referenced and then they have to go and look it up.
Oh yeah, I can't.
And then go back to reading, and then it totally changes your experience.
I can't watch TV anymore without Wikipedia.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way.
I'm watching some what was I watching? Oh, many moons ago. I was watching The Irishman, Robert De Niro.
De Niro, yes.
Released on Netflix, and it takes place in Wilkes-Barre. I'm like, are these guys real? I'm an hour from Wilkes-Barre. Wikipedia. Yeah. Then I'm learning about the mob and Wilkes-Barre. I can't do anything anymore without.
No, I think that's the beautiful thing about writing is all the different, I want to say rabbit holes, but all the different things that we find that are connected to that we learn about that make us incredibly charming at cocktail parties.
Yes, or just very awkward.
I know. So it's a well-known fact that So as we wrap up, final 5 questions. Is your workspace organized or messy?
It's a dining room table. I would argue messy.
What was your favorite Halloween costume as a kid?
Oh my God. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday, but I wasn't very creative as a kid. One of my favorite ones that I wore was like my mom's old nursing uniform because it really looked like I was a nurse, Yeah. So, favorite.
Very cool. You now own a coffee shop, kind of like Ugly Mug mentioned in this book, right? See, this is why it's such a setting because I want to go to the coffee shop. I want to go to the diner. There's food involved. And so, of course, like I get hungry reading your book. But how would you decorate the coffee shop?
Oh my God. I am like very much living for lately for sort of like a dark academia, like dark academia sort of vibe is like
Okay.
my whole thing lately. So I think I would like make it look like, an old library, just dark and moody. That's what I want.
Awesome. Low. Yeah. Perfect.
Low light. Yeah.
So referenced in the book is a tattoo. If you were to get a tattoo, what would it be?
I have one tattoo.
Oh, you
It's
do?
very small. It's a heart. I'm not,
Aw.
I mean, it's all right. I It's all right. I have considered another one, maybe a dove. My daughter's name is Paloma, which is Spanish for dove. So I
Yeah.
thought that would be nice. Or a hamsa. I'm really into hamsas. One of
Yes.
those.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Final question. Who is your favorite fictional detective, or who would you want to see Billy pair up with on a
Oh,
case?
Veronica Mars or Jessica
I
Jones. Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
kind of figured as much, but I thought I would just double
Oh my
check.
God. Yes. But it would be, that would be so fun.
Be so fun. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this evening, I want to say thank you to everybody who is watching and listening. Thank you to our tech team, Mike, for making sure everything went smoothly. A huge thanks to MaxBacks, our indie bookstore, Suzanne, etc., for making sure they have copies of Kimberly's books with them, just waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then a huge thank you to you. So glad that I grabbed an empty chair there at BoucherCon, sat next to you, got to know you and this remarkable series. I'm Jen Jumba with Writers Unplugged. Thank you and happy reading.